Welcome to the Top Talent and Immigration Show with your host, Kaushik Ranchod. In this show, we discuss how companies and top talent in America overcome immigration obstacles and help create freedom and prosperity in America.
Kaushik Ranchod here. I'm the founder of Top Talent and Immigration, where I talk with leading researchers, business leaders, and attorneys on how they overcome big challenges in the immigration process and business. In this episode, I am going to be discussing the third prong of DANASAR, the new National Interest Waiver requirements, and I will also be talking a little bit more in detail about the National Interest Waiver. So this message is brought to you by Ranchod Law Group. Ranchod Law Group's mission is to provide freedom and prosperity for immigrants and help more businesses to connect to top talent. Ranchod Law Group believes that immigrants add tremendous value to the U.S. economy and helps companies facing a shortage of talent to make up that gap and grow thanks to the immigrant talent that contribute to their bottom line. They also help immigrants to navigate the complicated immigration process today. Ranchod Law Group has been in business for nearly 20 years in Northern California and serves clients nationwide as a trusted advisor for employers and helping employers to attract talented immigrant employees. Contact Ranchod Law Group today for details on how the firm can help you solve your immigration problems at 916-613-3553 or at info@ranchodlaw. All right, let's jump right into it. So on the third criterion of DANASAR, what it looks like is, on balance, would it be beneficial to the United States to waive the requirement of a job offer based off of a labor certification requirements? What this factor basically recognizes is that the benefits inherent to labor certification process, and when we're talking about that what we're specifically looking at is protecting domestic labor, is outweighed by other factors that are in the national interest. This criterion also appreciates that a labor certification is at times impractical or unworkable. So let's specifically look at what we're talking about here and how this plays out. So, for instance, where the petitioner seeks to hire a foreign national with unique knowledge or skills, where the proposed endeavor is entrepreneurial or involves a self-employed inventor, that would be a situation here that would outweigh the labor certification process. And it's unique in the fact that how do you advertise like you would in a labor certification process for these positions? It's not really practical. So that's what the standard now recognizes, is that in situations like these, a national interest waiver is necessary. What we also want to look at here is that previously under the prior standard, it was necessary to demonstrate that the national interest would be adversely affected or harmed, and that's no longer required. And that was always a very hard standard to prove because it's always hard to prove a negative. So that's been a big improvement with DANASAR. So the most difficult facet of the national interest waiver process is building and documenting the case that your proposed endeavor has substantial merit and national importance, as well as demonstrating that he or she is well positioned to advance the endeavor. Let's talk a little bit about how, again, we talked about this earlier, but I also want to just revisit this because it's so important on the requirement to show that you're well positioned to advance the endeavor. So one thing you got to show here is this is similar, if you want to think of it, similar to the EB1 or O1 standard where you're at the top of the field. So how do you show that? Well, one way to do that is, and I'm going to just give you an insider's look at this, is if you're, for instance, a physician and you're an oncologist, you, to demonstrate that you're at the top of the field, would not want to say that you are at the top of all physicians. You would want to say you're at the top of all oncologists. And the reason for that is because it's going to be much harder to demonstrate that you are at the top of all physicians, because there's so many physicians out there as compared to the narrow field of oncology. So if you're at the top of oncology, narrow it down specifically to that field. And at the same time, you don't want to restrict it, overly restrict it, because you got to make sure that you're also demonstrating that what you're doing is in the national importance. So there's a little bit of a balancing test there, but I think you get the idea here of how you want to really narrow it down to demonstrate that you're at the top of your field, but not too much so. I also want to address in this podcast why you should file a national interest waiver as opposed to the labor certification. What are the advantages to that? Is a labor certification a safer option? The advantages of filing a national interest waiver is twofold. One of the biggest benefits is that you don't need an employer to petition for you. And equally important is that you don't need to go through the laborious labor certification process. And then finally, if you're entrepreneurial and you don't want to work for someone else, this is also really important because then you can self-petition. And as well, not having to recruit U.S. workers as you do in the labor certification process reduces the overall time frame because that whole process can take a significant amount of time. And then also here, an important other factor here is now, the labor certification is going to become harder and harder with the coronavirus that unfortunately is, running rampant, and the effects of the economy on that and the layoffs that are going to be happening because of that is going to make the labor certification also more difficult. So this is even more important in this day and age now. If you qualify, you'll be in the second preference employment-based category. In general, visas are available faster than in third preference. I want to address the part about labor certification being a safer option. It is more difficult for a national interest waiver to document and prepare, but it comes with considerable benefit, and it's a risk that is worth taking because of all of the benefits. Additionally, you can mitigate some of that risk by just evaluating whether or not to apply in the first place. And you can also apply for a national interest waiver and a labor certification at the same time. So you're not restricted to doing one or the other, at least in the initial commencement of the first step of the process. All right. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you have any questions, call us at 916-613-3553. And you can also check out our website at nationalinterestwaiverlaw.com. Thank you. Have an amazing day.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click to subscribe, check us out on the web, and we will see you next time.